Girl, We Need to Talk is a place where we have open, honest, transparent conversations centered around love, life, loss, and mental health. It started as a place to hold space for my grief after my dad died in 2018. But like me, it's evolved into a space where we as women can simply woosah, take a breath, and relax. We keep it a buck around here and have nothing to hide as we open up about topics that everyday women like you and me face every single day. So settle in and get comfy, because girl, we need to talk. Welcome back to Girl, We Need to Talk. I'm your host, Charity Bailey. And today, we're going to get right into it, talking about the slap heard around the world. And I know at this point, it's old news, but if we're being honest, none of us are ever really going to look at Will Smith or Chris Rock the same again, because Will Smith slapped fire from that man. But we're not talking about the slap. We're not talking about the men. We're talking about the woman at the center of the controversy, Jada Pinkett Smith. And that's because shortly after all of the ruckus and all the noise died down, she came out and told everybody that she has alopecia areata. And that hits very close to home for me because my sister, Elisabeth Bailey, aka Libby, has alopecia, and she's had it for a very long time. She was diagnosed with it when she was about 12 years older. That's when we noticed it. But she's here to share her story and give us a little bit of insight on what it's like growing up with alopecia and dealing with it today as an adult. So without further ado, welcome to the show, Libby.
Thank you.
My co-pilot for the day over there looking like a helicopter pilot.
Right. So this is part of the story. When you don't have hair, there's nothing to camouflage all the equipment. So take it for what it is.
Hey, it is what it is. You are here, beautiful and bald, a bald babe, as I like to call y'all. And this is actually your second time rocking the bald haircut. So let's start at the beginning. For folks who don't know, because we featured your story on Right This Minute. You've been on season 1 of Girl, We Need to Talk, talking about grief surrounding our father's death. But now we're going to talk about your bald head, that pretty bald head over there. So you started experiencing the baldness or the patches when you were 12 years old, and folks thought it was a ringworm, and it wasn't, clearly.
Yeah, because so here's the thing. It was the summer after 6th grade, so I had 6th grade graduation, had a whole little updo because it was the year 2000. And then that summer I was in the summer camp, like the day camp was like 2 weeks long, or I think it was like multiple weeks. So everybody, my sisters, my mom were just like, you've been around all these dirty kids, you probably got ringworm. Because I had like probably bigger than a quarter, but that size, like on one side further back in my head. So it was just like one spot, and they just were like ringworm. But I remember going to my pediatrician at the time, and she even thought like it's not textured, like it's not rough, it doesn't look like it, but we'll swab it and submit it and see if any bacteria or whatever ringworm is, if that shows in the culture. And it didn't,
because it was smooth. So I remember. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, ringworm is patchy and puffy and inflamed.
Ringworm usually is. Yeah, yes. Like I don't know if any of us had it as kids before that, but like I've seen it on the other little dirty kids. And so it looked nothing like that. Like, but at the time, that's the only thing we could think of. So yeah, the swab came back with nothing. It's just like, it's clean, there's nothing there. So the other thing we're starting to learn about is this thing called alopecia areata. There's 3 kinds. Areata means they come in round patches, and it's not just a thinning of hair. Like, it's a distinctive area of, it's completely smooth. Like, the hair follicles are gone. It's not like shaved. It's like baby smooth.
And well, what we're learning now is that millions of people are impacted by alopecia in general. And kind of looking into it more, that's the thing. I mean, as your big sister, we kind of went through it with you. And at the time, there wasn't a lot of information on it. There wasn't a lot of awareness about it. But according to some Statistics I found online, alopecia affects one in every 500 to 1,000 people in the US. And you mentioned that it's one of several different forms, but alopecia areata is the second most common form, and right after male pattern baldness. So that's also very interesting because, again, we didn't know much about it back then. And now people are coming out of the woodworks going like, hey, I too have it. I just wore wigs, or I too have it. I just got my eyebrows tattooed on. And a lot of women specifically who have alopecia are just going, you know what, to hell with these wigs. Like, I'm just gonna be free, shave my head, and do me. And that's kind of what you decided to do twice now.
Yeah. Well, I will say, when I said three forms, I wasn't even thinking of male pattern baldness, because I know alopecia areata, small patches, alopecia totalis and universalis are different, but one of them is like you lose your body hair, everything. You might lose eyebrows, you might lose eyelashes. I've had patches missing in my body hair and armpits and other things, but I've never lost my eyebrows or eyelashes. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, at the time I was told like it's stress induced or at least triggered it, but it's already, it's a I feel like I was told it's genetic, and that's one thing that was like hard to hear, because when you tell me something's genetic, I'm expecting to see it somewhere in my family. And I
Yeah.
looked to the right on my mom's side and I looked to the left on my dad's side, and I was like, so where are they?
Yeah.
Who has a story about somebody, like, so that's isolating, right? Where it's just like I'm confused, and why me out of all these generations?
Yeah.
But then the stress trigger for me, and the way our childhood was, my honest reaction was like, this is the first time I haven't been stressed out in 12 years. Everybody's getting
Right.
along. Everybody was just at my sixth grade graduation. It was peaceful. And now you're telling me I'm stressed out. Like, so if anything, I felt like the alopecia journey itself made me more stressed, having to deal with adolescence and navigate that. Um, but that's why when it came back in my late 20s, I was like, I'm not 12 anymore. I'm not 14 anymore. I'm not in high school. I'm not, like, forget all that. I don't want to go through the hiding and the trying to switch the style and the explaining it and diverting the question when someone asks, is it my religion? And I'm like, I'm a Christian. What excuse can I say? Yeah, I'm not going to pretend to be another religion just because that's the box that people understand head wraps or head coverings to be in. That's what I dealt with when I was 14. So when I was 27, 28, I gave it like 7 or 8 months of changing hairstyles, and then I just was like, this is over. I just need
Yeah.
to be free.
So before we get to the 27 and 28-year-old you, let's talk about adolescent you, junior high you. What was it like? Now, you mentioned they said that you were stressed out, and you're correct. For the first time, you weren't stressed out, and all of the chaos that we were going through with our parent separation and abuse and all the other things. And now suddenly everything's harmonious. Your hair starts to come out. What does that do to a young girl's self-esteem?
Well, again, first just feeling confused and isolated because, it's not something someone else in the family has. It's not like I have asthma, so does my sister. I have, eczema, so does everyone else. It's like nobody else knows what to do. Even the people who clearly care about me up close and personal are coming with me to the therapist, are, helping coax me out of the house when I don't want to go to church after I got all the way dressed and I just don't want to leave the house now. Like, even those people, because I lived with Nellie and Mama, they tried their best. I know that, but it didn't feel like it was like it. You can't explain to someone how to support you through it, because who really understands? Um, so it was things like that. Like the first therapist we went to, and all three of us went, it was like band-aids. So she said, well, why don't you just wear wigs? Or get, I don't even know if she said get braids. And honestly, it was this white lady. And I was just like, I don't think she understands the point in the first place. If you have
Yeah.
bald spots, getting braids doesn't help, because you can only attach braids where there's hair. And this is like, maybe sew-ins existed, but I was 12, 13. It got worse when I was 13, 14. So this is like middle of middle school.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm like, I was a really plain person. My style is still very simplistic, but as a kid, even more so. I'm like, I don't even wear braids. So how am I gonna skip braids and weaves and go straight to a whole wig? Like,
Yeah.
so I was coerced basically to at least give it a shot and go wig shopping. And we picked out two, and I bought them, and they sat under the bathroom counter for like a decade. Like, I'm not
Yeah.
even kidding. They might still be there somewhere. So because I refused, I would like put one on. I would be dressed for church and put on this little one, and then stand in the mirror like this. My bad. I'm moving the camera.
You're okay.
Just stand there and just go like, I can't do this. Like, I'm not going. I'm not going. Or take it off and still go. At that point, I would rather just all the bald spots that were lining the side just show at Sunday school or whatever. Those were the people who had known me since I was 2 years old. So they saw it happening, but they didn't know what was going on. And to be honest, some of those people didn't ask. It just took me how I was. But behind the scenes, every day, every Sunday, it was like this struggle.
Now you mentioned your hair.
In school, go ahead.
You mentioned your hair, and I do recall at one point, I want to say it was like your 8th grade graduation, you got this weave and it was so pretty. And then when you took it down, a lot of your hair was gone. Like basically a triangle in the middle of your head or something like that was left. So it's also the tension of the braids
Yeah,
and the weave that makes it worse.
maybe, but so yes, it got worse like 8th grade. And again, as far as going through adolescence, at this point in middle school, and we were like cohorted, it was less hard to deal with it in middle school probably than high school because I already had my people from 7th grade. So when it started being more visible, like someone would go, "You have this little bald spot. What's that?" And like be about to make a joke, and I just told them. That was at the very beginning. By the time it was like really bad, it was obvious, and some people would actually just like come talk to me on the side one day and go like, "Hey, what's going on?" Like, um, I tell people all the time, like I have so much respect. I have a special place in my heart for my middle school classmates, or the ones who like I knew from elementary, and we kind of grew distance later, but they would always come around and check on me even though we didn't really hang out. Like they actually never made me feel like a spectacle or anything like that. Oftentimes it was other people, it was adults in a store coming up to ask mama like, "Oh, is she okay?" I was like, who said this was your business? Are you going to help me? Are you a doctor?
Yeah.
Like, why are you coming up to some stranger and a child at that to make comments about their appearance? And yet my adolescent peers didn't, you know?
Well, adults are
Um,
just an interesting concept because it is true. Like children and young people handle things way better than adults do and tend to have more sense about it. Even so much, our nieces have done such a good job with your bald head and with your alopecia. I don't know if that's because, again, children just have good sense or if they were just raised and born into it. So they're like, oh, whatever, that's just Auntie Lizzie.
I think we're, as a society, we are learning more about like differences of all kind, right? Whether it's race, religion, gender, sexual orientation, disabilities, or other medical conditions. Like, so it's framed differently for them. Things are being introduced to them, and to some degree, the adults around them are learning to frame it in a way that the children learn not to just tease or treat something like a difference is a bad thing or a stigma. So,
Mm-hmm.
um, for example, like again, children's intentions, especially little kids, their intentions are different. So one time we were going to one of our niece's birthday party at the pool. I got out the car, I'm walking up, and this family is walking up, and I heard the little girl, like a couple car lengths away, say, "Mommy, is she a boy or a princess?"
Oh,
And so once she said she, and then she said a boy or a princess. But I remember our nieces saying that their mommy looked like a princess because she had her hair like up and then flowing down and all the things. So she had a genuine question. She saw my face and my body, but I had no hair. And her
mm-hmm.
mom was like embarrassed and
Mortified.
apologized and just like telling her to be quiet. And I said, "It's okay. It's a good question because I don't have hair, huh? You know." And then just normalize it. But she wasn't being mean. Um,
You've
and
done a
then one
good
of my
job
best
with that,
friends,
though.
like,
You've done a very
what,
good job with
responding on
that.
the fly?
Well, with children, because I recall one day
Yeah.
something happened in the bathroom, and the little girl asked if you were sick or something. And her mom was like, oh, and you stooped down and said, I'm fine. I just don't have hair. I shaved it off. And you like let her touch your head. And the woman was like, do you even remember that? Yeah, she was like
I don't
5.
remember that, but like you said, it happened so much that I don't. At this point, I don't remember.
So how do you suggest talking
um,
about it, something like this with children and adults even?
the first thing I tell people is I'm not sick. It's more of a cosmetic. It is a it has a medical origin. There is something going on in my immune system, but I'm not sick. I'm not in pain. Like, it's just something that tricks my body into doing something that makes the hair follicles not be able to stay. Like, I would explain it better than that, but literally there is an immune pathway in our bodies that responds to inflammation. Like, you sprain your wrist, yes, you take Tylenol, but your body is naturally trying to decrease the
Heal itself.
swelling.
Yeah.
Your immune system reacts to that to decrease swelling. Well, that same pathway is misrecognizing. So autoimmune conditions is your body misfiring, overreacting, underreacting. So it's misrecognizing inflammation where there is none at the surface of the skin, basically, to where it's making your hair follicles not be able to stay. They contract. So if the hair follicle contracts and the hair is now too big, it just falls out of the follicle and there's nothing to hold on to. But I'm not sick. And some people can style it around it, and some people just decide to not bother. Like, there's no right answer. It's what makes you comfortable. And I've gone through all the phases to the point of when it starts coming out again, I just start the clock. I'm like, then I'll be bald again. I've done that before. I know how to do that now, but it wasn't easy at the beginning.
Well, and that's the thing. At the beginning, they thought it was ringworm. Then there was the patches. Then you had the weave that took it out. And then you get to high school, and you said that at least in junior high, you had your cohort of people. What was it like going to high school? And I think at that point you had started wearing the wraps, but that was before the wraps were cool. Now everybody wears wraps in a cool fashion sense. But what was that like for you as a high schooler?
One thing, it was cool in like the acoustic soul, like India. We weren't our generation, millennials weren't Afrocentric. We had not taken that as a source of pride like they did in the 70s or like we are now. So we're like this middle generation where the only people wearing head wraps was Erykah Badu and India RE. Mm-hmm. Let's just be honest. And so India wore hers like in a bun. Erykah wore hers up with like a whole turban vibe. But at my high school, people had started wearing that. They would just take a t-shirt or whatever and tie it and wrap it in a bun.
Hey, bald babe, watch your mic.
Sorry. They would just take a t-shirt or whatever fabric and wrap it around their hair and then tie it in a bun in the back. So it was actually Nelly and Kale who were like, everybody does that at Kennedy. Why don't you just do that? Because Nelly was a senior and Kale was a junior and I was graduating 8th grade. So she graduated and left and I came in with a cousin already there. And, people from middle school and elementary. And so that was the plan. I gathered like my best 4 lavas and fabric store fabric and whatever just to switch with multiple outfits. And, of course, we brought a doctor's note to the principal, admin, my teachers, because otherwise you would be forced to take something off your head. We don't do that now too much. Like, I'm a teacher. The hats in the classroom is like, we don't fight that battle. Now it's bonnets and bandanas. It's everything. We don't have time for that. But
that's a different conversation.
In our generation, it was like hats off, no bandanas. Like everything is a gang. Everything was a gang. I digress. Yeah. So I needed the note and permission, all the things. And on one hand, it was like, well, what are the other kids going to say when they see that no one's making me take mine off? They're going to know there's something. You can't just keep it a complete secret. So people would ask, or eventually people would go, do you have hair under there? I've never seen it. Like over time, or is it your religion? People, my friends or, my new classmates would be like, just tell people it's your religion. They'll just leave you alone. And I'm like, no, it's not. But I
Yeah.
wasn't actually explaining to people what was going on underneath. I was just like, just please nobody like pull my hood off and it comes off with it. And that happened a couple
Yeah.
times.
Oh,
Um
tell us about that. That's got to be embarrassing, right?
it is, but you know what's interesting? Again, people take for granted the level of empathy. You know, people are like, "Oh, teenagers are a-holes and kids are mean," and like all those things are true for some people, but there are some of us, some of them who do have empathy. So like the two people who did it, one I remember well and one reminded me of this like 2 years ago on Facebook Messenger, and I didn't even remember that it happened.
Mm.
Um so one of them was like in the middle of biology class, and I had on my head wrap, but I also had on the hood to my hoodie. And we're ninth graders. People do dumb stuff all the time. So they pulled my hood off. The wrap came off with it. And in like a split
Oh,
second, he saw it and went, and he put my hood back on. Like he just put it back for me.
yeah, yeah.
And so I don't even remember if we talked about it later.
But he was not trying to embarrass you. He was just being a goofy boy, a goofy freshman.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Um, the other person knew what was underneath because he went to middle school with me. So the long story short, the academic program we went into in high school, it was only like 9 of us from my middle school, and we were like the underdogs from the hood, and we got closer. So they had seen it exposed in middle school. They saw me get the weave for graduation, wear it all summer, and then when I took that off and
One of the boys who
no.
did that had been through that journey with you, so he wasn't trying to embarrass
Yeah,
you.
so whatever happened, I when he made me remember, because we were catching up on Facebook. It's been 15 years since high school, whatever, life. And he's like, I just really want to apologize for that time when something, and I was like, not to be funny, Jose, but I have a really good memory and I have no idea what you're talking about. Like this happened, and once we got to it, then I had this flashback, and I don't remember the context or why he did it or joke or whatever, but I remember that he like bear hugged me and like hid my face. Like whatever, however he made it come off. I'm sorry, I'm hitting the thing. However he made it come off, we were facing each other at a point where he just like bear hugged me and covered my head. And
Yeah.
then I don't know if I put it back or what, but he felt so bad back then. And I was like, that sucked. It was embarrassing, but I knew he didn't do it on purpose. And we were like
Yeah.
real friends. So I got over it. And he remembered it 15 years later. Like he actually really felt bad. And I was like, I genuinely forgot all about that. That's not my first thought when I think of you from high school, you know?
Yeah.
Um,
Well, I mean, it was so impactful to him that he still remembers it. But again, it's because he was genuinely your friend and didn't intend to embarrass you. And sometimes we do something and that's not the intention, but that's still the outcome. So,
yeah. And
yeah,
sometimes the person impacted remembers forever, and the person who offended doesn't even realize how much they hurt someone. And this time it was the opposite. So
yeah.
that was interesting for me.
So,
Um,
how have you been able to just hold your head so high and just like walk in it in confidence?
honestly, I think I boil it down to like a sense of purpose.
Hmm.
And I was thinking about this the other day, just in church, and like I reflected on like what I'm praying for nowadays, and I was like, dang, I can remember being. I got you. I can remember being in Long Beach at your church when I was like 16 and came, for my little summer 2 weeks or whatever. And I used to pray that like my alopecia would go away, it would be cured. But I also used to pray that like my kids won't have it, my future nieces and nephews won't have it, because I'm just like, I don't know where it comes out in the family line, but nobody needs to go through this. Like nobody. If
Mm.
it just has to be me, just let it be me. Um, and over time, the prayer became like, if I have to go through the suffering, make it for something. Like, is there somebody, if I'm going through this so that the next person who goes through it, who I encounter, who needs support, has me, because I have nobody,
Yeah.
then at least there's that. And over the years, I have had those people. So at this point, yeah, it's like if I meet that person directly, I may be able to see it and seek them out and say, hey, if you ever, want to talk or have questions, or hey, what doctors have you seen? Maybe they don't know where to start. But also there's people, like you said, who have it and hide it well, and the fact that I wear it openly gives them a chance to approach me. And that's
It
also
does.
happened. And they have been my students before.
Oh,
Um
how do you describe it to your students, or how do you have the conversation with your students?
um my first year teaching, when it started, I hit it completely. And that was just like a hell of a year. It was a hellish year. I was just like, these kids don't need another reason to hate me, hate on me, make fun of me, something else. Like, it was my first year teaching. It was chaotic. I was stressed. And I was just like, I'm not doing this with these people. Um, but it was that summer that I cut it. So I came back the next year bald. And so, and again, if you know anything about teenagers, the teacher that they swore up and down they hated while they were in their class, the next year they're like, I wish I was in your class again. You were a good teacher. Meh, 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 meh.
Is that how they
So
sound? Murr,
at
murr,
the
murr,
point where
murr.
they're like, oh, now I want to come by and say hi to Miss Barnett. Like, so I remember the one kid who, they come by after the first week of school starting. They're sophomores now. And one boy is like, Miss Barnett, are you okay? And I'm
Yeah.
like, oh yeah, like, are you talking about my hair? And the same story, like, no, I'm not sick, I'm fine. I have this condition, my hair comes out. I just cut it so it could just be easy. But I'm okay. Like, trust me, I'm gonna be here. You guys didn't make me quit last year. I think I'm tougher than that. I'm gonna be here.
Right.
Um, but then at that point, I put up my two school pictures. The Life Touch picture. The first one from my first year, I had a big fro. My hair had been growing for like a decade at that point. No, I had cut it, but not because of bald spots. I just wanted to cut my hair after college. So it had been growing for like 7 years, natural into a fro. Had that picture, and then the one from that school year completely bald, and I put them both in a little sleeve and hung it up on the wall. Just so my new students who met me bald would see the fro and be like, that's you? And then my previous students who met with the fro and saw the bald head would just ask, like, why'd you do that? Um, but so from there on out, I hung up those two pictures no matter what stage my hair was in, because, and I also attached this infographic about alopecia that I got from
Oh,
this organization called Bald Girls Do Lunch.
yes.
Um, and I found about them during college and just like read, what they do, who they are, people's testimonials. They've had like conferences around the country in different parts. I've never connected directly, but I'm like Facebook friends with some of the people affiliated because we're looking for each other.
Yeah. Well, there are so many
But yeah,
resources
I
now.
post those two pictures. Yeah, but I post those two pictures and the infographic on my wall or window or something every classroom that I have now. So eventually people will notice it.
Yeah,
Um,
but it also helps them to understand, and it's not the elephant in the room, because also it might be uncomfortable for them to
mhm.
ask because they might think that you're sick. So you do a very good job of explaining it. I do know that when we shared your story on Right This Minute, we showed the video, and we have that video as well of you getting your hair cut, and a lot of women reached out to us. A lot of little girls reached out to us. I mean, as young as 4 or 5 years old, their moms reached out to us. And you talked about,
Mhm.
I talk about often purpose and pain, and you talked about like, what's the purpose in this, and if I have to go through it, then allow it to be for something. And for you to be so
Mhm.
young, you've also always been so intuitive and in tune with your inner self. And that's one of the things I admire about you. So for you to even understand that at that age, and then now to see you here in your 30s and sharing your story and walking boldly and proudly and empowering other women. Like I said, our Facebook pages, all of our social media, like I think that was one of the most watched stories. Some men reached out and they're like, "Oh my gosh, like I had no idea." And so to just kind of bring it all back around, like when you cut your hair off that first time, we thought that was the end, and then you came back, you went into another study, and your hair started to grow back again, and now here you are bald again. Is that an emotional roller coaster, or is at this point it's just something that you've come to term with being a part of your life?
At this time it was just a fact, and I had like a game plan, and I had so the cycle is like this. When I had hair for years, and I have combs and clips and scrunchies and bobby pins and rubber bands and jam and edge control and gel
A
and
black
hot
girl's hair
oil
care.
and and deep conditioner and leave-in conditioner and then I cut my hair, and I was like, what am I supposed to do with all this? I like
I
lined them
remember.
up. I lined them all up and like took a picture of myself and was like, who wants it? Like, do you want me to bring it to church? Do you want me to bring it to your house? I don't have anything to do with this. And then on the flip side, when my hair grew back, I was like, oh, well, I guess I can put away all my head wraps and my turbans and because while I was bald, I had to figure out how to be warm in the winter. Like, I slept in beanies.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'll be like, sorry you're waking up next to Tyrone Biggums, but I have to sleep in this beanie in the spot because I'm cold. Like, you know how much of our
Hate
body
you,
warmth we lose
Libby.
through our head? So it's cold. So, Tams and beanies and scarves and head wraps and all the things. So, I put those away and got back out the few hair supplies I kept, my favorite comb, my favorite brush, and then the other stuff you just collect again. But this time when I cut it, I kind of started the clock. When I first found I quit the clinical trial, and we just skipped the clinical trial. So if you want to talk about that, we can, because that's like the TBD, the people who I am in contact with, when I'm like, I will, when it comes through the FDA and is on the market, I will tell y'all what to ask your doctor to prescribe if you want to try it, if it makes it through the trial. But I was in the clinical trial for 2 solid years. Those 2 years included COVID. So like my best hair days were in quarantine. What do you know?
I remember because them girls was popping, sis.
But when I quit the clinical trial, it was like 2 months before I started seeing like dime-sized little spots, and it was just like parting through oil in my scalp, and I'm like, oh yeah, I got like 11 of them. Okay, just tiny. So I was like, all right, start the clock. I will be watchful and I will style around it, and then when I think that it's about that time, I'm gonna cut it again. And I've been there before, and I have my toolkit of things, and so at that point, it wasn't an emotional roller coaster. It was just like a pragmatic, like, these are the facts. I've done this before.
And our nieces got to help you with it. They were so proud of themselves. And our brother actually, did the shave. And it was cute. But also, again, I think at this point for our family, it's so normal. And it's just, who you are. And again, you tell your story well, you rock it well. And also, you're just beautiful. So I remember when you first cut your hair, everybody was like, only Libby is going to walk around at 6 feet and still look like a supermodel with a bald head and bomb earrings. Yay, Libby.
Oh yeah, that's part of the toolkit is
Okay, tell us about the toolkit.
more. Well, my first thought the first time I cut it was like, okay, so women accessorize. I kind of don't. For me, it was like, grow your eyebrows back out so there's some feature to your face. Bold lipstick, earrings. If you do hats or headscarves or head wraps, great. Because sometimes I'll just put on like just studs and then the baseball cap, the colorful floral one,
Yeah.
and but big earrings, hoop earrings, like bigger studs, because the little studs just disappear into the background.
Yeah.
And then I've always worn scarves, like in the winter, around the neck. So it's just like, frame your face. Just frame it.
Accessorize, frame your face, make everything else pop. Now, you mentioned the study. I do want to talk about the clinical trial because you done one before when you were younger, and that kind of went haywire. But this one seemed to be successful. So tell us about it.
By haywire, here's what you mean. It worked, but it was so strong that it actually like gave the nurses rashes, because that one I had to go in once a week for them to put it on me. And the nurses' gloves like it permeated. She was wearing 2 gloves. She still got her rash. So that one, it worked, but it didn't pass the FDA because of the repercussions. This one is in pill form, and it is a medication that is actually originally used for rheumatoid arthritis. And rheumatoid arthritis is another autoimmune condition. It's not like when you age and you just get arthritis. So the 2 conditions are actually caused by the same immune pathway. And so it's an inflammation. Like theirs is inflammation that causes pain. Ours is the inflammation that just, is at the skin level that makes the follicles not viable. The pharmaceutical companies that are doing the trials, they've basically taken one compound and tried to tweak it to see if they can minimize the side effects. Because if you think about it, you've seen those medicine commercials where they're like, it's going to cure all these things, but also may cause these other 13 side effects and death. Well,
you might turn purple and blue, your teeth might fall out. Okay.
Well, so if you have a condition that is like painful and you're really struggling every day, you might want to take that risk, and at least it will alleviate this pain. And now I just have upset stomach and headaches or something. But with alopecia, it's not, there's no physical pain. There's no, declining health factor. So yes, please decrease the side effects so that it's worth me trying it out. That's the way I looked at it. So they've tweaked whatever compound and have the trial is, different dosages of tablets or take it a different number of times a day. So I joined this particular trial in like the 3rd round. So there were already 2 groups of people like a year ahead of me and 6 months ahead of me, maybe taking like 8 milligrams twice a day. And then the other one was taking 24 milligrams just once a day. And then so on. My group was something like 12 milligrams twice a day. So it's just a pill twice a day, but it's a clinical trial. So there's guidelines and then there's constant follow-up. So the guidelines are like, if you miss a pill, you need to document it. You need to write down, I missed Tuesday PM pill. So like initially came in this big booklet with like the AMs and the PMs. And when you come back every 2 weeks, you need to be able to account for which ones you missed, and they should still be in the packet. Like
it's very detailed for sure.
Yes.
But you liked it.
Yeah. So I say all that for the scientific purposes of like, this is all that goes into clinical trials for the skeptics out there about clinical trials, how long they take and how in-depth they are. They're checking your heart rate and your blood count and everything every visit. But yeah, so I saw hair growth I started November 2018. I know I at least had like the little weird trail of hair growing back by New Year's. So like 6 or 7 weeks, I saw hair growth. And by 3 months, it was like everywhere, but just needed to thicken in certain places.
And then you had a full fro by the time you came to see me in May.
Yeah. The anticipated side effects were like abdominal pain and nausea and maybe headaches, but like I didn't have any of the nausea or abdominal pain, and I had a headache like every couple weeks. So you have to document that too. I'd come back to my appointment and go, okay, on this day I had a headache and I took this much ibuprofen and it subsided and I was fine the next day. On this day, like, whatever medical things you have, or since it was through Kaiser and I have Kaiser, if I called the advice nurse and said, I have a cold sore or I have a cough or they were able to see that and say, okay, you talked to, so it's very, very connected, and they're like monitoring everything that goes on with you to make sure if too many people in the study have the same things, then they need to recognize that correlation and attribute it to the medicine. But if it's a one-off, then,
That's the point in the study. Okay, sister, so we're going to wrap up here shortly. Like I said, you've done a very good job of sharing your story, living life to the fullest. As a woman, you seem to walk very confidently in it. A big thing, though, especially as a single woman, like how does it affect like dating or like, your interactions with like men or boys, like when you were younger and that type of thing?
Oh, when I was younger, there were no boys.
All right, right. Well, what about now? Like, is it awkward? Is the conversation awkward? Do they care? Like, do you care? Like, you just like, I don't give a damn. I'm bald. Take this bald head and love it.
So I was married when I first cut it as an adult, and but my husband was a friend from college, and again, when I entered college, I had no signs of alopecia, and that actually became one of the things that I would like share with people who I thought like these are real friends at this point, mid college. Like first time was like at a girls retreat where we all went around and shared something, and I was like, oh shoot, when it's my turn, I'm gonna share this thing for the first time, with people who don't know me from childhood. But so then from there, it was like, okay, well, my guy friends in college. So I had shared that with my spouse before we ever dated. They just never saw it. So that adjustment in the marriage, it happened while we were married. Like it wasn't like overtly hard, but I still always wondered, like, how does he really feel about this? He's being supportive, but does it feel awkward, or is he wondering what his friends think, or, now take it or leave it. It is what it is. Yeah. So if you saw me out, that's all you saw. So at this point, I mean, I'm thinking like, that's part of the allure, probably. They're thinking like, oh, she's natural or Afrocentric or whatever. And then a lot of people see it and they don't realize it's not a fade. I'm like, no, there's nothing right here.
No, you have a razor. You just go over it in the morning like bap, 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 and head on about your day.
And honestly, I only do it like every 2 or 3 days because ain't nobody got time for that. I see children, like, so on the right or wrong day, you will see where it still grows in and it's growing out prickly. So maybe I'll put on a head wrap or a cap, or maybe I don't care because I have to go teach geometry and like, who cares? Like I am really more into who cares. It's a fact. You'll see me tomorrow and it'll be fixed. So if it's not an occasion, then I don't necessarily always, touch it up.
So what you're saying is that like with most men, take it or leave it, they gonna like it or love it if you like it or love it. Basically. Yeah. Yes. You had some very strong thoughts about the Will Smith slap. I know I too have checked some people on your behalf or whatever, so I got it. I understood it. What were your strong thoughts?
I had strong thoughts.
You was I get.
What I said.
Gosh, now you act like you didn't have strong thoughts. Okay.
No, so wait. So my thoughts ranged from like, oh, she has alopecia. To me, it looks like she has a fade. So maybe hers is one where it's like thinning rapidly, but we can't see the patches yet. And she hit it early before it got to that point. The moment of the joke, and then, everyone was like, but Will was laughing. And it's like, yeah. And then he looked over and saw pain in his wife's face. I don't know if I would expect my man to do that in a live broadcast in front of all of Black America and the rest of y'all. But at the same time, if it was the grocery store, I think he should have done it. I mean, like, I don't know.
You understand it is what you were saying.
I understand the moment between like, haha, we're going to laugh this off. And then like, oh, she's not laughing it off. So now we're not laughing it off.
Right.
Because yes, stand up for your wife.
Yeah. Yeah.
Period,
and it's
blank.
Something that, I mean, he knows, as your family knows, like some of the highs and lows, ups and downs, the emotional parts of it, the physical parts of it. And I think we feel your pain. Not condoning violence in any kind of way, people. But let's just be very clear. If you got something to say about my sister, I'm chin checking you. And I'm going to actually think about it. Our other sister ain't going to think about it. She is Will Smith.
No thoughts. Now, he could have walked up and snatched the mic and made his best jab verbally.
Yes.
Will didn't do that.
Whatever. He got one little fight there. Everybody's scared. All right. Well, we're going to wrap up. I do appreciate you. Like I said today, most people have co-hosts on the show. You my co-pilot. I don't think we realize how much hair is a part of our source of pride, self-esteem, warmth, and even down to the the mic piece, like we talked about, like you can't hide it, you can't tuck it, you can't, hair supports that and all that. But
You wanted me to wear it like this. That
I
looks
did
even
want you to
dumber.
wear it like that. I was like, she clearly never worked in customer service, but then I mowed it. So whatever. Even our producer and director were like, no, put it on your head. Just be the co-pilot. But thank you so much for sharing. There is so much purpose in the things that you've experienced. And I'm just really happy that we've grown to a place. Good old motorcyclists here has decided to come ride past. But I'm really happy that we've grown to a place as a society where we can talk about these things, we can raise awareness and be more informed and ask informed questions and gain knowledge. There's also this thing called Google too. So, I mean, you can look it
There's
up.
that.
But
I
yeah.
still use it. So we, have a god sister who also has it and has some other health issues right now. And I was like, is there a correlation there? Is this something that, is there a likelihood that I could have that future health condition? Like, is there research about the two? I'm going to call her and ask if she asked her doctors about this particular research,
Yeah.
because 1 in 500 people, did you say? But I'm like, yeah, but can I list 500 people that I know personally now on Facebook? Like, so in my circles, usually I'm going to be the only one. You don't
Yeah.
really have, you need to use Google.
Yeah.
If you have alopecia, start with your dermatologist. If you haven't, you can start with your primary care. They're going to send you to the dermatologist because it's categorized under things that are skin related, like eczema and everything else. But it's your immune system. It's fighting against you.
Yes, because it is an autoimmune disorder. So with that said, we have learned a lot today. And again, thank you for sharing. And hopefully those of you listening, I'm getting the finger. That means you have something else to say. Go ahead.
Yes. Can I say one more thing? And I thought of it earlier. And I know
Yes.
this is, girl, we need to talk. But I wanted to say earlier, actually, the first student I had who I found out had alopecia was a boy. He was a freshman. He came with the doctor's note awkwardly that said he's allowed to wear his hat or beanie in class. Please don't make him take it off. And I was like, it's happening. This is my first person, right? So I found a time to like come to him discreetly during like a icebreaker around the room and say like, hey, remember that note you gave me? I have it too. Like, that's all I said. And then he looked at me like this because my hair was grown out, but I got to tell him later more about it. But and then of your viewers from RTM, one lady had, good old Facebook likes to do like 8 years ago today and bring back old comments. And within the past couple years, I read a lot of them. And one lady was writing about her teenage son and being in high school. And it's like, yeah, you're a boy, but how many times do we talk about men being taught to suppress their emotions and not be vulnerable and all this stuff? And it's like they get it too, and they go through it too.
Yeah.
And
a former Pittsburgh Steeler had it, and his wife was going ham on social media because he is bald, so people just thought he was bald, but he didn't have eyebrows. And so people were talking crazy because that's what people do on social media. And she lit them up, and it became a source of conversation. So, yes, this is called Girl, We Need to Talk. But men do also experience male pattern baldness and alopecia areata. So I'm actually glad that again, you're in position to help other young people, other women, other little girls walk their path and figure out their journey and support them in it. So you do a great job of doing that. So thank you so much, sister. All right. With that said, cheers to being happy, healthy, and whole. Producer Aaron gonna kill us because we way over time.
My bad.
All right. Cheers. I love you. We'll see you next time.
Love you too.
On the next Girl, We Need to Talk.
Your resume is supposed to be a list of your accomplishments. And a lot of times we make it a list of our job duties, right? And so if you're just listing things that you do, but someone is listing how well they do it, that person's going to get the job. I don't want to know if you can file paperwork. I want to know if you're able to create a streamlined system for our filing. That's the difference. Right? So I don't want to know I file paperwork. I want to know that you computerize our filing system and now we're able to find our clients faster.
Thank you for listening to Girl, We Need to Talk. Don't forget to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts and leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcast. Want to watch the show? Be sure to subscribe to the Miss Charity Bailey YouTube channel and connect with me across all social media platforms at Miss Charity Bailey.